All right. Hey everyone. How you doing? Hello everybody. And thank you for joining me on today's and this week's Tuesday tip at 2. I am streaming live as I like to call it today, in real time. So I hope you're able, those of you who are joining me on real time, I just want to say, hey, how are you? I hope you're enjoying this lovely day in the Philadelphia and surrounding suburb area or greater Philadelphia area, as they say. And listen, it is me, Danielle J. Mitchell, your up and coming queen of real estate. And I'm here to bring you today's and this week's Tuesday tip at 2. I'm doing a little part 2 of what I talked about last week. Had a brain freeze. Doing a part 2 of what I talked about last week. And so, yeah, I want to dive into it. And I already said that I was going to do that when I did last week's episode, that I would do a pros and cons of renting. I have recently gotten a few, clients who want to get rentals, which is a-okay. As I said before, it's not my preferred for my clients because I want them to own. It's an exciting, wonderful thing to own, to be able to, build wealth, pass it down to your kids, have something in the event something goes awry in life, as life can happen, and you have equity to use and all that good stuff. But I understand that some scenarios just would have it so that you need to rent, right? So in that case, it just has to happen. So I want to give you tips for what's happening in real life. Listen, as I said before, rentals are just as competitive as home buying. Okay, if not more at this point. I shared before that I remember those who were, trying to help me get into real estate and be like, they were like, yeah, go ahead, do some rentals, get that under your belt to kind of get your feet wet in real estate and get your confidence going because you're doing some transactions. And my first transaction was a rental, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. And I have found since, unless you're listing a rental, doing a rental listing. But if you're working with the tenants, it can be challenging, especially in these last few years because of inflation, because the market is so hot and buzzing that it has caused rental prices to go up, I believe 8 to 12%, some higher, and depending on where you are, but I believe they've gone up at least 8 to 12% in the past year or two or so. That's just off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure when I last read, that's what it said. But let's move on. Before I get into that, I have to continue to promote for those buyers out there or people that are interested in buying. I have to promote this program. So I want to do a quick screen share just to remind those, okay, my new subscribers, my those of you who are on here, I have to remind you that the city of Philadelphia, Philly First Home Philly First Home Program is back. I have to remind you of that. Okay, so if you are interested in buying, this grant is fantastic. If you are trying to buy in Philadelphia and you're a first time home buyer, then this is for you. The requirements are stated here. Don't mind all the tabs that I have up back there. Just don't pay any attention. All these tabs. But yeah, so this is the income requirement. You have to do a a home buying workshop. And they do have, where you can go, all the counseling agencies, and then I think you do a one-on-one counseling, you get your certificate, and then you can get either 10,000 or 6% of the purchase price, as it states here, whichever is less. All right. It's a great program. It rolled out a couple years back and it quickly went away because so many people jumped on it. From what I understand, it's more funding. So hopefully it'll stick around just a little bit longer, but it was great. It is great. And one of the easier ways if you're buying in Philly to get some assistance without it, without having hiccups, if you will. So moving on, let's talk about the pros and cons of renting. All right, so I'm gonna just let's just talk about the pros. No, let's talk about the cons. Let's do the bad first, and then we'll go into the good. So the cons, is that, well, I'm gonna just go back and forth. Pros and cons. No long term commitment is a pro. Okay, no long term commitment. Um, the con though, on the same wavelength, is no permanence. So it's no long term commitment, but there's no stability as well, right? A lot of people will rent because their credit's not there and all that good stuff. But before, I remember way back when, I just have to say this. I remember way back when it was so easy to go ahead and let me go ahead and do this so I can be able to see and read better. But I remember there was a time it was just easy to be able to go ahead, say I'm gonna go ahead and rent something, and while I'm renting I'm going to save some money, put some money aside, and build my credit and all that other stuff. But because again of inflation of rental properties, why is there inflation? Because it's so competitive. Because the market has went up as far as the purchase price, and so because the house is worth more in value purchase wise, it goes up in rental price to offset it, right? So it's just a lot going on. But in times past, you'll be able to get a rental, save a couple of dollars, right? And hopefully in a year or two or three or four, however long it takes you, you'll be able to have done enough to be able to buy a home. But that nowadays may or may not happen, right? The good thing is about the no long-term commitment. If you're a person who's like, hey, I'm just relocating to Philadelphia or wherever you're going to rent a property, and I don't have time to get pre-approved and do all these different things. And of course, a rental just makes sense, right? You're just doing what you need to do. Hopefully that job is paying, it's paying, upfront to help you move and relocate, right? So that takes the pressure off. But a lot of times, depending on your scenario, you may not want the long term commitment. Maybe you know that, hey, I'm not going to be staying in this area or in the state that long, right? Another pro, no responsibility for maintenance. I think this is a huge one because a lot of times I'm talking, especially the first time home buyers, there's a bit of a culture shock. It is a big game changer when you are in charge of your property. If something happens to it, there is no calling nobody unless you have a home warranty or unless you have a relative who is super handy or has a trade and that can help you, or a parent. But there is no calling somebody to help you fix it. There is calling you. You're calling yourself to fix it. Or you're paying somebody to get it done, right? So the onus is not completely on you. Now again, I don't know, because it's so competitive out here. At least I'm talking private landlords. I'm not talking if you're in an apartment building. It's a bit different in that way because you have a property manager. You have somebody, and they'll have a handyman or something like that will come out and do the different things, right? But with these private landlords, it depends on what it is. A lot of them will have caps. It's like, hey, you have to take care of all this stuff at the tune of, if it costs more than 500, 1,000, $2,000, then I'll take care of it, right? Or depending on what it is. But if it's like minor things, no. You're handling that, right? So you're handling the stone removal, you're handling cutting the grass, you're handling all that stuff. But again, when we're talking private landlords, when we're talking about renting a home, it's quite different than if you're in an apartment building. Okay. So that no responsibility only goes but so far. But for the most part, if something major happens, the responsibility is on the landlord if they are a proper one and doing it the proper and legal way, right? The kind of rentals, as we've been talking about, your rent price isn't fixed. It is not fixed. This is even more common in, if we were talking apartment buildings, right? They go up, you know, every 6 months, every year. You know, they're always going up. They're always matching the market. They're not. I don't even think they match the market. They just like, listen, we just gonna go up. We're just going up every chance we get. Private landlords tend to, depending on the landlord, it's, to each his own. They may go up every lease. They may go up every year or every time for it's time to re-sign the lease. But there are many people, and that's the other thing. That's what's sad, right? There are people, and I was one of them. You've been locked into a rental price since 2000. You've been locked into a price since 95. You've been paying $500 for a 3 bedroom house, right? And it's unrealistic, right? So there's again a culture shock that happens when you're either trying to go buy your house, because it's like, well, I was paying less than rent, right? Or when you try to go buy a house, or when you're trying to move because you want a different area, or you've been paying the same price for that property and they ain't do nothing to fix it. They didn't touch that thing up. They haven't done anything to it since you moved there in 95, right? So it's like, oh, this place is looking crazy. But then you realize, like, hey, to get this same amount of space, I need to be paying triple, right? I need to be paying triple that amount at this point, right? It's a culture shock, right? So the good thing is that when you buy, your principal and interest, they stay the same, right? Now taxes are going to shift, your insurance may shift, but at the very least, for the most part, if you're unless your municipality takes some huge hits, which doesn't typically happen, I'll say typically, but um you know every municipality, most will go up incrementally year over year, right? So they might add an extra 10 dollars, the extra $5, just the extra couple dollars, and a lot of times that can be balanced out if you shop your home insurance and kind of do that kind of thing. Every year you can maybe offset some of that. So in that way it changes, but for the most part you're paying around the same price for the whole length of your market, at least for the principal and interest. Okay, so I want to make that very, very clear. Another pro: minimal unexpected costs for repairs. Again, it kind of goes back to not being responsible for maintenance. If the onus is not on you, if the refrigerator breaks down, you know, hopefully that landlord will be responsible and replace it. If something happens with the stove, that'll get replaced. Excuse me. There's a little something in there. All this pollen in there. My car's looking green. It's just a mess. But anyways, the con is you may not be allowed to have pets. If you love cats, if you love dogs, you may or may not be allowed to have them. Or if you can have them, you're paying, some money extra. You're putting an extra security deposit down, $500 for your cat security or your dog security, or you can only get have a small dog in the house. You're only limited to one or two. You're only no pit bulls. If you're a pit bull lover, no big dogs. If you have a Great Dane, So it's a lot more restrictions, right? Another pro is could be cheaper than owning. So depending on where you are, depending on what you're looking for, I feel like in the Philadelphia area, it is still cheaper to own a house than it is to rent. It is still cheaper. Um so yeah, it is still cheaper in the Philadelphia area, surrounding suburbs. It is still cheaper. Okay, cons, you're at the mercy of your landlord for maintenance, cost, stability, all that good stuff. Pro, no down payment. Con, no tax benefits. Listen here, I don't know. Okay, I should have. I'm not. I got this from Google machine. A pro of it not being a down payment. It depends on your price point, because a lot of times the down payment, the first, last, and security that you have to put down. Now with an apartment building, again, sometimes it's different. Sometimes you only need 1 month you need to put down. Sometimes it's two. They do specials, 50, half off, all kinds of stuff. But with private landlord, you have to do first, last, and security is the standard. Now, someone might let you get away with first and last, okay? Especially when you start getting with those higher price points. If you're trying to get rent a house for 4,000, 4,000 times 3 is 12,000. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's absolutely enough for a down payment, or at least, and towards your closing costs. That's something. That is a start. Hey, you can get grants if you're a first time home buyer. You may be able to get some sellers assist. You can get some stuff that can help cushion that, right? But that's a start. So even though it's no down payment, that's a hefty amount of money that you're still putting down, depending on what price point you're at. And even if you're at a lower price point, even if it's $1,000, right? $3,000 for first, last, and security is still the start of being able to get something that's within your budget that you can afford, right? The con is no tax benefits. Of course, when you're renting, your money is just going into the wind, right? It's not building you equity. It's not for something that you can, keep will to somebody. None of that. It's no benefits. Okay. So that's where we are. That's what it is, folks. Another thing I was saying, I think I mentioned this before, when you're out here and you're applying for rental properties, the way it shows up in your credit is not great. It's a lot harsher. It shows, the hit to your credit, it can take you down 10 points, 20 points, and you figure if you're applying because of the competition, you're applying for several properties, it's not good. It's going to drastically decrease your credit score. But when you're shopping for a mortgage, the credit bureau recognizes and allows you to have choices, right? So if it a lot of times what I learned from a credit specialist is that it doesn't have make your credit go down at all if you get a hit from a lender, a mortgage lender, for your credit. Um and you can do it multiple times. And if it does go down, it's very little. It may go down 1 point, maybe two. But from what I understand in my experience, it really does not go down when you go and shop for a mortgage, which is quite different from when you're shopping for a rental. It's a hard inquiry and it goes down. It goes down. Okay, so that's the other thing. That's it. That's all I got, guys. I hope that helped. Listen, if you're interested in buying a home, if you're interested in renting something, because that's what you need to do right now, go to book.djmrealtyco.com and let's talk about it. Thank you to all those new subscribers. I need you to like, share, and follow. I also need you to comment if this is helping you. If this could help somebody else, please give me feedback. Let me know. If you want me to discuss something, let's talk about it. I'll be more than happy to go over a topic that you need to hear about, need more information on. Okay. That is all, guys. I have some exciting news coming up, and I'm not, I'm not going to officially share right now, but I have some exciting news coming up, some exciting things coming up, and yeah, I can't wait to share with you guys. So remember, there's no place at home, no place at home buying, and I'll see you next time on next week's Tuesday tip at 2. Bye.